typically we get ready for training camp, and the day is the 28th, and the fans are there, and we know the fans are going to be there. The players aren't even going to be on the field for a long time. It may be the middle of August before we see these guys out there.
So that video of Cam Newton, was that in a bubble?
No, which brings up your great point about how challenging this is going to be for these guys to live their lives knowing that they're not in a bubble and exposed every day.
I commend the NFL for what they've done. They've planned all along that they're going to start on time. They've planned they're going to have fans in the stands. I don't think either of those things are happening. Forget the fans in the stands. And starting on time now, the NFL hasn't even begun to go through what baseball has gone through, what basketball's starting to go through, and hockey's about to go through. And your point is great, Tom. Testing with 80 players in camp with the most contact sport. Actually, basketball might be tighter, but they're in a bubble.
Sure.
So football is a long ways away.
You're talking about 2,400 players plus in the league, and they're basically going to have 3 weeks, if all goes according to plan, to get ready for a season, because they're not going to be on the field till the middle of August. So all the preseason games wiped out. How do you feel about that, first of all, that they're not going to play preseason tune-up games?
Well, when you look at the schedule that really hasn't been publicized a lot, meaning that the Patriots and NFL teams aren't going to get in pads until 2 weeks before the start of the regular season, how I feel about no preseason games is we're going to have a lot of crappy football when the season starts. How are these guys really going to be ready to play NFL football? It's usually bad at the beginning of the year anyway. So that's how I feel about that.
It's going to be very different, and it brings us back to the fact that aside from COVID, there are such great stories to this NFL season, though, and hopefully that will attract some of the attention. Obviously, the fans in the stands, however many there are, will attract some attention, but the players that have gone to different teams, and Brady and Gronk in the Tampa, and Cam up here, and who's going to win that quarterback battle? We all assume it's going to be Cam. But it's just so different to look at your calendar and see July 28th and be like, Patriots training camp starts. Not really.
Yeah. Well, I think football leads us into baseball because we're waiting for football to come back. You mentioned it. So many great storylines. Baseball came back with a fill in the blank. A thud, a bang, somewhere in between.
I was critical at first of the crowd noise. Thank God for the crowd noise, because it would be painful to watch these broadcasts without them. And I don't think it's too obnoxious. I think it does add to the tenor of the game and the broadcast. And I even like the noise that the stadiums are pumping in when a player makes a good play. We haven't hit full speed yet. Everyone's still getting used to it. The Red Sox losing 2 out of 3 to the Baltimore Orioles, when you think about who they're going to have to play over the course of this regular season, is disastrous. They can't do that. But then again, you don't know which team's going to be hot and which team's not.
The guy that's in control of the crowd noise at Fenway, did you notice when a Red Sox pitcher's on the mound, there's not a lot of cheering going on? This past weekend against the Baltimore's, their pitching is so bad.
Well, get used to it. And I've heard the guys on EEI talk about it. Lou Merloni bangs his drum all the time. It's a lot of long games. You're going to be looking at an offense that can hit and a pitching staff that can't pitch. So you're going to have games that are 10-8, 12-10. And when I saw him score 10 the first night, I was like, okay, that's what we're going to see. Evaldi was able to hold him down, but that very easily, with a bad pitcher, could have been a 10-8 game, just like they're talking about.
Yeah, and we hear from Erod now, and Erod's got other issues related to COVID, so he's not going to be back for a while. I mean, there's not a lot to say about the Red Sox because their pitching just isn't that good.
What would you do if you were Eduardo? Would you come back? Would you take the season off based on everything you've gone through, the COVID diagnosis and now the heart issue? Would you just play a conservative and say, I'm not doing it?
I'm sorry. I'm just going to defer from that question. I'm not Eddie Rodriguez. That's a personal decision that everybody has to make. But you're right. If he's got an issue that could end his career or end his life, you're not playing baseball. You can't.
I think you got to make the conservative choice. Obviously, you'd like to see the best pitcher come back and play, but it's clearly something we'll be watching. So the Bruins have made their trip up to Toronto to enter the NHL bubble, Canada East. Bruce Cassidy this week, sticking with the COVID theme, said this is what we're going to have to deal with. You know, we don't have Pastrnak and Kasha back, but that's just another component of how we get through this postseason. Typically, it's injuries, but now it's injuries plus a possible test here and there.
So we both agree that Cassidy's a great coach, right? I think what he's doing when it comes to hockey here is preparing his team. The Bruins have depth beyond 25 players. It goes down. Don Sweeney has done a good job in doing that. I think he's sending a message. Be ready, players 26 and beyond, because David Pastrnak might not be back. There's a domino effect to that. And guys may end up being healthy, testing positive, or being out, and now you're up here. And he knows, on top of all of that, we're going right into the playoffs. So I think he's sending a message to his team that, hey, we're 40 deep in this organization, and we're out to win a Stanley Cup. Be ready.
Crazy that we're talking about all these sports. We're going to hold off on the Celtics because you had a great conversation with Kara Lawson. Any quick tidbit about that? What should we look forward to?
She's earned this opportunity.
Yeah, Kara Lawson coached with the Celtics. She's now the head coach of the Duke University women's basketball team. Butch's conversation with Kara coming up in just a bit.